restrict parking for personal and business vehicles on HOA roads. The consequence of that is, let me just say, in our community, we have I live in such a community, and we have an opposite side of the street parking regulation. Streets are very narrow, so that on even days, you can only park on the even sides, and on odd days, only odd sides. State law now requires us to allow people to park on both sides. People are parked on both sides. It's impossible for an ambulance or a fire engine to get through. And I wonder, first of all, I assume that I'm correct in saying complete streets policy, general policy doesn't apply to private roads. So I'm probably out of order for bringing it up in this topic. But this is, I think, a concern. And I don't know whether the legislature and the governor considered the public safety implications of this new statute. And I can only say that I've asked the leaders of my community, who usually pay no attention to me, to look into this and to see if exceptions can be made for opposite side of the street parking.
Do you mind if I just respond? Sure, thank you. Thank you, Myron. I think that's an interesting, I haven't heard about that with this. You said Florida Statute 720 with the HOAs. That's very interesting. Now, when it comes to complete streets, obviously you get incorporated into the design criteria of roadways. And for private developments like that, the principles of complete streets could still apply. But what's interesting, what you're bringing up there, it seems like with that statute, it sort of preempted the subdivision design that was going on at the time of that development, right? So that is a very interesting issue, and I can see why that's a problem there. But yeah, it seems like it does go to like your subdivision regulations and how it was originally built out, and now the state is sort of preempting that with allowing additional uses with the parking on both sides, so I'll definitely look into that and talk about it with our multimodal team about that issue. But I mean, overall, where you're headed though, complete streets policies can make their way into subdivision regulations in some ways.
Right, I understand. I wasn't bringing this up to ask you to look into it.
No, but
because it's really a more general problem for private communities with private roads, and but it is my father-in-law was career firefighter and retired as chief, and so I'm very sensitive about making sure that fire engines can get to where they need to go. And when random parking prohibits that, that's a serious issue for me.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody else in the committee? All right. That being said, we're going to move right along to action items today. Action item 2A is the fiscal year 25 strategic plan. And I'm going to invite Brian Ruscher, Deputy Director of Multimodal, to present. Brian?
See if mine works. Give it a second. Don't push it.
It says that it's working and the light is on. Good to go. How are we doing this afternoon? Happy new fiscal year, everyone. Are you all as excited about the fiscal year as I am trying to be as excited as Andrew is about it? 4 days late for fireworks. All right. So my goal here with item 2A, Deputy Director Multimodal, Brian Ruscher. Nice to see you all again. Let's go through the strategic plan, progress report from fiscal year 2024, and the recommended updates to the TPA Governing Board for 2025. Our strategic plan may look a little different than other strategic plans that you've seen in the past. So we have our Unified Planning Work Program, which is our core budget document that outlines everything that we are going to do with our grant dollars from the FHWA for planning purposes. Our strategic plan is our above and beyond document. So this is all of the activities that the TPA staff will be doing over the next year, which are in addition to our unified planning work program. So to start, we are going to go through our fiscal year 24 progress report. So these are the things that we've already accomplished. We're not really going to do much more with them outside of maybe sunsetting some items. So we'll start with, just like our UPWP lays out, engaging the public. So our first goal is, and many of these goals are met first and foremost and exceeded in some way. So just for example, every year we have a specific goal to receive public comments, either at public meetings or on our online map, through surveys, etc. We had a goal of 500. We stretched that goal from 400 last year to that goal of 500 now, and we exceeded it to the tune of 617 comments. So we are continuing to exceed public comment goals, not just from touch points with the public, but how our social media engagement falls, and it's shown in item 1B, excuse me. Our goal is 125,000. We had over 330,000 engagements online. So we're reaching a lot of people. We're very proud of that. We've also updated a lot of our content and presented a lot of content to individual groups and agencies. 29 presentations when our goal was only 20. So for the system, goal 2. This encompasses our short range and our long range planning task of our UPWP. So it kind of rolls those two into one. We have had a county-wide mobility vision on our plan for some time. We're really proud to have accomplished that this year. We have the plan created, drafted, and it will be going to county and cities review before it gets final publishing online. For the pedestrian bicycle safety review that Andrew mentioned, that has been completed. That process is on our website, as well as creating a speed management action plan. So for our most dangerous corridors, our high injury network in Palm Beach County, we are looking at the speeds of those roadways using publicly available data and trying to come up with countermeasures for how we can reduce the speed and reduce the severity of those crashes on those specific locations to try to target and reduce fatalities and serious injuries. That goal is in progress. We're expecting a presentation to the committee in September. For prioritization of funding, we have checked all of these boxes, but to run through them really quickly, supporting and tracking applications for discretionary grants. We have supported 14 applications when our goal was only 5. Pursuing of discretionary grants, we supported multiple agencies in their pursuit of Sun Trail projects locally here in Palm Beach County. And of course, we also have the goal of updating our funding programs, which we accomplished in October. We'll get to that, come back to that funding programs discussion when I go through the 25 plan. For goal number 4, we have identified a series of resurfacing projects already for complete streets improvements and worked with cities to get those improvements funded. We've obviously published our annual system report card. We do that every February. And then we have also assisted a number of municipalities beyond our goal of 4, totaling 6 with grant application and project identification. Getting to the last 2 goals here, or excuse me, last 3, there's one more after this. Collaborating with partners, we have exceeded our studies in terms of assistance that we're providing to local communities. We've exceeded our goal and doubled our outcome for events on topics of interest. So this has to do with complete streets, Vision Zero. Housing was a really popular subject that we hosted 2 modules on last year as well with our partners in the Planning Congress and other local agencies. As Andrew mentioned, we created a transportation management policy, and we conducted 2 different site visits for local partner agencies. We've also, under goal 6, provided 56 trainings to TPA staff and governing board members when our goal was 40. In addition to that, we've also streamlined and implemented a number of new agencies' systems, benefits, and services that are more internal to how the TPA operates. So for example, our accounting system, we now have a new, more at least statewide recognized accounting system for how MPOs operate in the state, which will help us with some of our back-end processes. So moving on to 25. We have the recommended changes for our strategic plan. So what you will see in this format is a strike through and underlined with a red circle around anything that is changes. So as I'd mentioned before, we had over 330,000 social media users reached. We're bringing that goal to 350,000. It's still a pretty ambitious goal given what we were at even 2 years ago. So we're still moving that needle and trying to engage with the public as much as we can. We feel that our videos and our content are pretty good and fresh. We have all the latest and greatest from Brightline, all the latest and greatest bike shares, mobility on demand, but we want to increase the number of views. So instead of refreshing content, we're going to focus this year on reaching new people with our video content and retaining the other goals, which are largely the same for engaging the public. For planning the system, we have 3 new goals that we will be working on, 3 new actions that we will have to accomplish this fiscal year, meaning by June 30th. First and foremost is to create a transit-oriented communities policy recommendations. And what that means is we've already studied the 561 corridors. We've studied where the station areas are going to be. Now we need to figure out the back end start of where we start shifting policy and moving in the right direction for our cities and our county, so that when we make these federal or heavier investments into transit corridors and multimodal corridors, that the zoning and the land use is supportive of those investments. So we want to make sure that we're working with our partners on that policy. This is probably going to have a 2-year policy recommendations and then implementation plan. So you can probably see fiscal year 26 as having a follow-up item to 2A. For 2B, we originally had conduct a bicycle rail access study as part of a recommendation from SFRTA, from our partners in Miami-Dade County at the TPO there. They've conducted a rail access study for bicycles, which concluded, I believe, in April of this year, and recommended that we do a very similar study. For those who don't know, we have the most popular bicycle accessed station on the Tri-Rail system out of all of the station areas in South Florida in Lake Worth Beach. And we have the most popular scooter accessed station in Boca Raton out of all of the South Florida stations. So we are going to be taking a kind of more micro look at the station areas themselves and the bike shed or the micromobility shed, I don't know what we're going to call it yet, of about 3 miles, looking at the infrastructure, the actual station configuration itself, and providing recommendations on how we can better improve micromobility access to our Tri-Rail stations. And then lastly, updating our Vision Zero action plan, which you, I believe, heard about last month, our report card. For goal 3, prioritization of funding, we would like to launch an interactive project status dashboard. For those of you who haven't seen our website, we do have a number of different places to access information about projects, a number of different project lists on different pages. So we'd like to consolidate some of that and make it a little bit more of a streamlined effort through a new program that we've already acquired, and we're hoping to build and make that a publicly accessible tool that's really clean and really easy to consume. And then looking at our best practices for item 3A, one of our actions is to revise the list of priority project structure and how that works. This is based out of a recommendation for DOT. One of the items you'll see later is our list of priority projects. So you'll get a sense of how that list is structured and maybe some changes about how we are telling DOT what projects we want to fund and what in the long run that needs to shift towards. More than likely is one master list instead of 3 different lists, or some reduction of the listing overall. For implementation of projects, we've worked with our partners and we've met our goals for resurfacing. However, we've identified that simply the operational and maintenance budgets for many roadways probably isn't the transformative type of projects that we would expect to see for complete streets improvements. So if you're just going out milling and resurfacing the road, it's very hard to just add shoulder to add a bike lane based off of the current cost of the roadway system. So we've changed this out to just say upcoming, but the other the other actions for item 4 remain the same. And if you haven't heard, we are hosting a regional Safe Street Summit on February 6th and 7th here in downtown West Palm Beach. All of you will be expected to attend. This is where we will be hosting Miami-Dade County and Broward partners, as well as our regional partners at FDOT, rail providers, and others at the downtown Hilton. So again, February 6th and 7th. This takes the place of conducting events on topics of interest. We'll likely still have a few of these throughout the year, but to be frank, the hosting a regional summit with about 400 people that is a day and a half does take a lot of effort. So that's why that has taken the place of item 3B. And we will conduct mobile tours. So we've had some really great relationships with our ports, Brightline, our transit operators, and we hope that we will be able to bring 4 different tours to their facilities in the long run. So for administering the agency, this task was pretty heavy last year because we knew that we had some things that we had to do and we wanted to be bold and ambitious. This fiscal year, we're taking it down to a more normal. We strive to have about 3 tasks per goal of providing an advisory training, providing more board member and staff training for MPO type work, and then an internal board and advisory member training, as well as producing our strategic plan and annual report. And with that, happy to take any questions. Anybody has any questions, motion for recommendation is also welcome for the strategic plan 25 update. Thank you. One second.
Yes, we do have a public comment.
Okay.
Richard Stove, please step to the podium. Say his last name. I'm sorry, the microphone's not working. Could you help?
Richard Stowe, 414 North Federal Highway, Lake Worth Beach. I came here to let you know about a 3-phase FDOT resurfacing project and seek your support in requesting that the city and the FDOT reduce the lane widths from 12 feet to 10 feet. Olive Avenue in West Palm Beach recently took 28-foot curb to curb right of way and shrunk the 14 feet lanes to 10 feet. And so from Southern down to the bridge, it's 10 feet. We would like to see those 10-foot lanes go all the way down to the end of Federal Highway and where it meets Dixie Highway in Lantana. And it's consistent on January 1st, effective January 1st, 2024. FDOT changed they have a table on lane widths, 12, 11, and 10. 10's the least wide lane allowed by FDOT. And they changed the width or the notes where it no longer required a median, which last year and years before that, you needed a median to do that 10-foot lane. You don't need that anymore. And all the requirements that they do spell out in the notes, I have a letter from the FDOT design director, the FDOT District 4 design director that Federal Highway meets those criteria. So if you're concerned about bike safety, pedestrian safety, Vision Zero, disability crossing that would lower the crossing of the lane widths, having lane widths of 20 feet to 2+. It's a 2-lane road, north and south for those not familiar with the area. But it would be 20 feet instead of 24 feet where you'd be walking across motor vehicle lanes. So good deal for all overall, and I really could use a letter of support. I spoke to Albert Richwagon, I believe, and I don't know if he's present here today. He serves on this committee. Yeah, is he here? No, I didn't think so. And then with regard to the comments that were made by the previous speaker, your staff person, great news on the Tri-Rail train ridership. I've ridden on trains across the country, and it's one of the easiest for bicycle access. And then with regard to safety, I'll share this. At the general or governor meeting, I came here a few months ago and spoke about roundabouts and mini roundabouts and roundabouts like the University of Mississippi.
Thank you for your comment. Your time is up.
What's that?
Your time is up.
Do you want me to finish my sentence?
Yeah.
Okay. They beat and meet expectations in terms of like CO2 reductions, carbon monoxide reduction, sulfur oxides, travel time, reduction in reduction in accidents and deaths. So good thing for your Vision Zero and your, and alternative transportation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. All right. Do we have any committee members have any comments on this item? Meyer?
Could you put up task 6, please?
1 second. while we get that. Hold up.
The last, I think it was the last task.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
This says provide board and advisory committee training. We need training?
Every committee should be trained. There's a series of things that each committee should be trained on. First and foremost, bylaws, what the primary role and function is, what your statutory authority is for your committee. I think that's important to have. We also trickle in sunshine because you are an appointed position. You make sure that you get sunshine training and anything else that the staff or the governing board would deem necessary. So I would venture to say yes, if you're serving on a advisory board or other type of board and they're not providing you with training, I would venture to guess that you need to ask for it and make sure that you're operating within your bounds. I think that we do a really great job, and this is for all committees across the board and the board itself.
Would
So-
you expect this training to occur during normal meetings or
Yes.
outside?
Yes, for our board and committee, it would happen during a regular meeting.
Myron, just for your reference, I'm on the vice chair of the Art and Public Places Board for the City of Palm Beach Gardens. Our first meeting of every fiscal year involves the city attorney coming, giving a presentation on sunshine laws, ethics, and so forth. And then we are also required to take the ethics course every other year from the Palm Beach County Ethics Commission. So
And
pretty typical, actually.
Yeah, I remember going through all this stuff when I was first appointed to the committee, but on an annual basis.
it needs to be refreshed.
Okay,
All right.
certainly new members.
Any
We,
other
we do offer it for new members, but we are going to do it even for members. I mean, it's like the driver's handbook, right? You get tested once maybe, and then you think that you're good for the rest of the time, and then you encounter a diverging diamond interchange. You don't know what that is. So I think that it's good to have a refresh of the committee training program. Probably not going to keep this in perpetuity for the fiscal year 26 strategic plan, but we need to refresh our content, make sure we're up to date on our sunshine ethics and other reporting obligations if we have them. So it's good to share that with the committee.
Okay, and there are about 50 or 60,000 people that are going to need training on the continuous left intersection to be put on North Lake Boulevard, on the line to North Lake Boulevard, going west.
We'll work with you and get started on the content.
Thank
How
you.
about that?
All right. Thank you, Myron. Any other comments? None, seeing none. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Moved by Paula, second,
Second.
second by Ryan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Chair and Committee.
All right, the next item, motion to recommend adoption of the fiscal year 26 to 30 list of priority projects. I'm gonna invite Andrew Euler up, Deputy Director of Programs, to present on this item. Andrew?
One second. Can you hear me? Is that working?
There you are.
Okay. All right. So this is one of those items kicking off the new fiscal year. It's the list of priority projects. So this covers the next round of our TIP. So it's going to cover 2026 to 2030. Last month, you all recommended adoption. The governing board finally adopt the Transportation Improvement Program for 25 to 29. So that's our current TIP now. So this is working towards that next year. And so what goes into this list of priority projects? It is the set of TPA priorities projects for federal and state funding over the next 5 years. And so we're currently operating under fiscal year 25. Again, this is 26 through 30. What is commonly referred to in that outer year is the new fifth year. So a lot of the new products that come in will be in that outer year, year 30. And with this list, it really is a long process to get to this point into the final adoption of a TIP, as you all know. So it starts with product development. So that comes from our long range plan. We have a series of products in there. There's also programs in there for smaller scale projects. Those projects are then vetted to see if they're ready to be implemented. And if they are, through that feasibility, through the vetting process, ensuring there's a good cost estimate, they then get put into the list of priority projects. That list of priority products is broken out into our major categories of the TPA. That's major products, local initiatives, transportation alternatives. There's also the shared use network trail, which is a discretionary program that we show for priorities. And that final list, once adopted, is sent to FDOT for them to bring into their work program. And so in that work program process, what they're doing is they're updating cost estimates on current products within the work program. So, when cost estimates go up, they're ensuring they have the correct funding for that. And then they're also, on top of that, any of the priorities that come in with the additional funding that is available, they'll program more priorities. And so with that final list of TPA priorities and then all the FDOT priorities is the draft tentative work program. That's going to be seen this year in December. They're able to make it for the committees and then the governing board. And so that's our opportunity to comment on that draft list, that draft work program. And then they make changes to that based on those comments where they can. And then they build their final work program. And that's what is consistent with our transportation improvement program. And so it's a long process to get to this point. It's over a year's work. So today we're looking at the priorities for the next round of our TIP. And what we're talking about in the backup today was, again, just those TPA priority products, the major products, local initiatives and transportation alternatives, and SunTrail. And then the other ones are ones that you'll see in the TIP. But again, those aren't the TPA priorities. So we're just really focused on the ones that we have prioritization over. And those funding programs and other sections and how we distribute those. The first one's major products. Those are mostly state funds, like state gas taxes that are spent on state roadways. A lot of these are long-range transportation cost feasible projects. The larger scale ones are. Think about State Road 7, Atlantic Avenue. Those are ones that come out of the LRTP, come into the TIP. And those are mostly using state funds with a little bit of federal funds. Then there's the local initiatives program. That was a competitive application process, capped at $5 million a year. And that was all federal funds. And we still have that program. It wasn't open for an application cycle this past round because we have a backlog of projects. But that's mostly federal funds that we have to prioritize. And then there's transportation alternatives, which is another federal pot of money for us to prioritize. And that goes towards non-motorized transportation. And so I'm going to provide just a few updates on ones that have some changes since the last time you've seen this list. There's a lot of products in this plan that are already totally programmed. And there's ones that have already had funds requested that are potentially going to be programmed this next time around. I'm not going to mention anything that hasn't really changed. I'm just going to give you the highlights. The first one is the Tri-Rail extension on the FEC corridor. And this is heading north into Jupiter using the Northwood crossover. And so right now in the TIP in fiscal year 25, right now we have funds for a study of Tri-Rail extension. And that's going to be administered by FDOT. They're working towards some studies in both Broward and in Palm Beach. And we're working closely with them on what is going to be in the scope of this study, ensure that we're moving forward with implementation of the extension in any way we can. So we still don't have operation and maintenance commitments with local funds committed yet to really build the system out and maintain it. But we're trying to get the steps in place so we can get to that point. And so what this study is going to look at is there are going to be specific studies. Broward has some other needs versus what we have. But with our portion, looking at station locations, and more detailed cost estimates when it comes to operations and maintenance. So really what our request to FDOT here is just to ensure that they're doing close coordination. They're about to release the notification for this one for consultant to administer these services. So we're trying to stay on top of this. The next one on the major product list is the one that was presented last month, and that's the US 27 connector out in the Glades community. So FDOT came and presented to the committees and to the board with various alignments for a bypass truck route in the Glades community. There was 4 alignments. With that information, the feedback they received from the committees and the board, they're also going to use that information plus do one more round of stakeholder outreach in the Glades community. Probably get these alignments down to 2 or so alignments. And what the request in the list of priority products is to fund the next phase, which is going to be the product development environmental phase. So they'll take one or two alignments that are really the best fit for moving forward. And they'll do the more detailed study for the feasibility there before they head into actual design. And so the request is just to put PD&E funds on that. This most likely, if it were to get funded, would most likely occur like in an outer 5th year. Since it is just a PD&E phase and it's not getting into design and construction, maybe there's some opportunities to accelerate that a little bit, like the next product I'm about to mention. But we typically assume outer years for these new phases. And the last one on the major products list I want to mention, this has already been on the priority list for a few years now. It's 21-6, so since 2021. And this is identified as one of the higher congested roadways in our county and a state roadway, and it's Indiantown Road, just east of 995. And so it's been a big priority of Jupiter to accelerate this part of this project, a product development environmental study for this part as well. And so it's from Island Way to about Central Boulevard. There's a prior study done that looked at this area and the kind of things they could do out there. As Myron just brought up, the displaced left turns, that was one of the recommendations in this study. So they would be evaluating the displaced left turn for this roadway as well, among other concepts to improve congestion and safety. So what they're doing in this one is that PD&E phase. It's already programmed for PD&E in the list. We're just requesting acceleration. The other sections, the first one is the local initiatives. I don't have any slide on that one because there's no distinct change on that one. It's all the products that were in it last go around that had not been funded are still there on the top of the list to be funded this time around. It's about $20 million in needs there. And I think we'll probably have a few of those definitely programmed this next tip in the outer year. And then for transportation alternatives, there's been 3 new products. And then we did take one from the local initiatives projects list that was not funded. That seemed like a good candidate for TA. And we're submitting for that one as well. So that's 4 products total. So these are the 4 new products to the TA list. And it covers about $5 million. This pot of money, we have a good handle on how much money we do have. It's around $5 million. So we anticipate these to all be fully programmed. And these are non-motorized products that are submitted by locals. Yeah, that's all I have for you. There's a much larger list in there. I just really gave you highlights on some changes.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Staff, is there any public comments on this item?
Yes, we have a public comment. Richard Stove, you may approach the podium.
Thank you, sir.
You want me to repeat my name, address?
Yes, hold one moment. Let me pull up the timer, please.
So push on this. Okay. Richard Stowe, 414 North Federal Highway, Lake Worth Beach. I wanted to speak about like a graphic image of the rail systems or planned rail systems. And like Miami-Dade is done like an EIS on adding 5 stops between Miami Central Station and Aventura.
Oh, really?
They are using Brightline to sort of set the standard for the FEC line with their platforms, their level platforms where you walk from the platform into the train car, like you walk from one room to another. Don't have to like go up steps or anything. The Tri-Rail, existing Tri-Rail line has grade level platforms where you climb up the steps. And if someone's disability, they have to get a lift to get them on. It's cumbersome. It's like unfriendly to disability. It's like a little difficult for some cyclists to like bring their bike up onto the train. I highly thank you for pulling that up. So what I'm concerned about is this looks like an old Coastal Link plan where you had a crossover in downtown Pompano Beach over to the Tri-Rail line. And Tri-Rail had discussed this and said they want to use the level boarding and not level, excuse me, the at grade boarding for the FEC line. The new plan for Miami-Dade is they're going to use the level boarding where you just walk from platform 2 right onto the train. And I would discourage that from taking place. I think we need to start, the county needs to start an EIS program from Boca to Jupiter and have it consistent with what the precedent that the Brightline has set. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comment. Any committee members have anything about this item? Paula.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. So I have one question about what you presented, then another question on State Road 7, but it's just it's nothing to do with the project itself. Anyway, the O&M on the Tri-Rail extension on the FEC corridor, do we know what those costs are, and have we approached, because it says you're looking, I guess, for local commitments, you want those that are on the corridor to help fund it, and how have they responded?
Can we start?
Go ahead.
Sure. I think we do have, from a TPA perspective, we have some high level cost estimates when it comes to capital and O&M for the full corridor length throughout the county. So we have those sections for the extension specifically as well. What these further studies from APDOT would probably refine that a little bit to get more into details. I think we have a good idea about where that is. I think there needs to be a little bit more with these studies, a little bit more concrete specifics on where the stations would occur and how they could be implemented. When it comes to that local commitment, obviously there's a variety of ways out there to achieve that. You know, it was brought up at a TAC meeting about, you know, it could potentially be a local sort of, does everyone chip in on the corridor like that with their own general revenue services they have at the municipal level or the county level. More of the discussion has gone more towards like a surtax countywide. Obviously, that's a very large revenue source that could come into play. So that's sort of been the conversation. We haven't really had too many conversations about specific locals paying for, you know, a share of the service. I don't know, Brian, if you wanted to add anything else onto that.
Yes, so we've requested DOT also come and make a presentation to committees and board in September. So you should get an update on this particular element as well. And just wanted to also respond to Mr. So's comments. We are advocating for the similar level porting for ease of transit users in the future system. we are a long ways away from that. Obviously, the operations and maintenance commitment is still required. I think SFRTA just brought forward their maintenance, or excuse me, their funding agreements with DOT in the 3 counties for their existing system. So that's on the table, and I think that costs are not going down, so they're continuing to try to identify new revenue streams.
So having these systems in place, we're going to have operating and maintenance costs, let's just say through, perpetuity. And I think it's important for it to be utilized and become part of the transportation system or transportation network in the county. Are there funds that we can start to tap into or identify from the infrastructure bill and the feds? Because as we build, or the surtax is, sure, there's going to be money used to help operations and maintenance, but there's a lot of build out that's going to have to occur. And that surtax is probably going to be limited for, like the last surtax, for a 10-year period. So, I'm an asset management person, and I would like to see us fund this for perpetuity, and looking at how we can ensure that's the case when we ultimately get to the stage of building out this additional infrastructure.
Yeah, I'll follow. I'll start and you can go, Brian. Yeah, we've talked about that, and a lot of the federal and state sources out there, which there are a lot of those for especially capital funds. So I think once we have some dedicated stream for operation and maintenance, FTA is not going to let us go forward unless we have an O&M, a dedicated source for the ongoing operations and maintenance. So we really can't get too far into a PD&E without that dedicated source. That dedicated source locally for us, I say locally, here at the state level, there is going to be some level of state money towards it. The Tri-Rail already gets some state money. There'll be some federal money towards the ongoing operations and maintenance. So we're looking at a local chunk, but the majority is going to be local. So we can make some assumption about how much we'll get from a federal and state perspective. And early on in the creation of the service, there'll be a little bit more supplemental funds from the state to put into that. They'll allow that for a few years. But long term, it is going to be some local dedicated funding source.
And then the State Road 7, which is on this list, and to vote for this, whatever to call this.
List of private projects, yeah.
Of course, I'll be kicked off the board if I vote yes for the project. So is there any update on how much longer this is going to go on?
Sure. So they finished up that first hearing, the Water Management District, and the judge is now looking it over. So that'll be the next, probably by the end of the year, they're going to have a decision on that. Obviously, there's going to be appeals to that. The appeals process does not involve, everyone coming back in and stating their case anymore. It's all administrative. So the appeal process should not take long if that does go to that, which it probably would. And then there's one other case to be heard with that, but it's also a much shorter part of the bigger picture. So I think by the end of the year, we'll have some good direction by that.
Thank you.
Can I clarify that for?
Sure, Myron's on top of it. That's okay.
I've been,
James, I don't.
yeah, just the hearing on the environmental resource permit was concluded in May. There is scheduled for a hearing on the water use permit in December. It's my understanding from conversations with people in the city that they do not expect a decision from the administrative law judge until probably the end of 2025, maybe early 2026. There are over 100,000 pages of documentation. And then they expect the appeal process in any event, whoever loses is going to appeal. They tell me that the appeals process might take 2 years.
So, well, there you go. Thank you, Myron. So what we've heard from the AFDOT side was their anticipation of the timeline. It's probably something around the end of the year for that first case. Regardless of that, the products themselves are a few years out in the work program. So when you see in this list here, and what was in the tip right now is, I think it's fiscal year 27 and 28, might be 28, 29. So there's still some time in there before they even start construction again. So if it does get delayed for another 2 years, it wouldn't impact the production schedule as it is right now in the plan. But thank you, Myron.
Byron, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I'm really confused. The presentation, which is always is informative, but and maybe I heard it wrong, but I heard a lot about the tip and changing things from one year to another in the tip and putting things in the tip. But we're talking here about the list of priority projects. Now, I understand conceptually that the list of priority projects feeds into the creation of the tip. But I don't understand how the priority is assigned to the various projects that agencies and cities or jurisdictions say, we'd like to put this on your list. So the question is, how is the priority, how are the priorities judged? Is it strictly because, there's money for this and not for that? Or do the board members who represent different jurisdictions, which have different interests, say, well, we really want to move this project up the priority list? I mean, you listed some priorities 24-1. Those are new priorities. There are old priorities. I mean, the State Road 7 thing is 04-1 and 04-2. So, so the question is, who decides and how are all these priorities ordered? And I just didn't hear that. Maybe it's because I'm older than all of the national political candidates and I just can't follow things very well.
If I may, sure. It's a good point, Myron. I think, as we go through this, it's always important that hopefully I can do a better job of clarifying the process through some slides in the future, because there's a lot involved in that part. So when we have this transportation improvement program, it's a 5-year document, right? And when we're looking at the TIP and the work program, they're essentially the same thing. So let's say I'm going to use the word the work program that is out there for all these products in there. Once you get into the work program, and they all have various phases and funding associated with them, once you're sort of in the work program, the main goal is to continue the production schedule of that project. So if you have design 2 years out, you got right away, 2 more years out, you got construction, and it's kind of going down the pipeline. Other priorities that come in might even be higher priorities for an agency at the TPA. We might have an awesome idea come through. It's ready, huge priority, but from a funding perspective, it starts just like every other product, most likely in the back of the work program, and it's working its way through that production cycle. So you might see in our list of priority products and in our work program, products that start jumping other ones just from the sheer production schedule issue, right? For example, if State Road 7 or Atlantic Avenue, whichever product is a huge priority, and let's say it got delayed, like State Road 7 did, went way to the back of the program, the construction even left the tip, and now it's back in the tip. Let's just say tomorrow everything was cleared up with State Road 7. Even though it's a huge priority to the TPA, us trying to accelerate that by shifting other priorities around would be very difficult, because you're then having to shift maybe a handful of products already on the production pipeline out, right? And so trying to move things around, especially in current fiscal years or the next coming fiscal year, can be very difficult because of the sheer cost of products, and they're already on the production schedule. So that's why things might shift around. And even though you see numbers associated with everything in the list of priority products list, I guess I could theoretically say that, yeah, the ones at the top list are maybe higher priorities, but at the same time, it all comes down to production schedule as well.
Well, I'm still confused. I mean, let's suppose that there are new projects coming on. You listed a number of
Mhm.
24-1, 24. How is 1, 2, and 3 decided?
sure.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay,
And
understood.
let's say that there are projects that aren't, they're out in the 5th year. State Road 7 and State Road X. How do you decide in the list which of those is higher priority?
Mhm. When it comes to those competitive funding programs, so the easier ones to talk about would be, just because it's a program every year, is local initiatives and transportation alternatives. Those are ones that are scored. So you're vetted and then you're scored based on a scoring rubric out of 100. And then that list of priority projects is presented today in that order of the scoring.
Okay, I understand that because in fact, this committee was, in the past, has been asked to review those scoring things, okay? So those things I understand. So you got a higher score, you got a higher priority.
Yep, and then it would be in that
But what
right.
about the things that are comparable expenditure of state funds out in the 5th year? How is it decided that this is more important than that? Is that a political decision? I mean, we're not, it's the same amount of money. Okay, I'm just talking hypothetically.
Paula, do you have insight on this?
Yes, I mean,
Wrap it up.
part of the problem in some of these projects are that development approvals throughout the county have been given based upon projected roads or infrastructure, of which the TPA and FDOT provide a lot. So State Road 7, for the example, which is one I know, an enormous amount about, was always projected to be built. And therefore, all of the development along North Lake, including Ibis and beyond, were approved based upon the anticipated infrastructure being there. You hear them talk about roads failing. It's a D road or an E road, an F road or whatever. And the approval process is not, in theory, supposed to be given. The approvals for those projects are not supposed to be given until there is capacity on those roads to accommodate them. And so we're in a situation with State Road 7 where everybody, when that was originally approved and put on the priorities project, everybody was in support of that. And as it's been built, the communities have been built out, you've created sort of a backlash to that because they don't want those roads coming through their neighborhoods. So the priority on the list stems from a whole combination of cities, the county, FDOT, and, basically the development of Palm Beach County. So we're in a tough situation with State Road 7 because the people that are here today were not here then when it was done. But that's more development that has occurred, and it's hard for people to step back and say, we can't do this. So it's in the system, and the system is what it is, and there's no way to take it out unless you have more people on the governing board voting to support, and the city of West Palm Beach votes to support. So we're just here where we are.
Irregardless of the exact project in question, to echo your point, Myron, about understanding how the priorities are set would be a helpful thing to know. Perhaps if you have further questions, you and Andrew can talk offline, and if it's worth bringing back a concise presentation to the CAC so that we can all be more informed of how that presentation might work, I would be in favor of that, but I'd like to keep moving today on if we can.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you very much. Andrew, if like I said, if you and Myron care to discuss, and if there's a concise thing to be said in the future, please put it on the agenda. All right, VJ, you have comments?
Thanks. So the only question I have is that in the priority list today, you did talk about US 27 connector. I see that it's written it's around 3.5 million for PDN and study. My question is that something that is like, we are expecting it in the next year. Can you hear it? Is it better now?
You're good. Keep going.
Okay. Is it something we know for sure it's next year, or is it still gonna be like pushed behind based on the funding availability?
Sure, yeah, it would be a combination of uh, funding availability, and then AFDOT would lead this study or lead this process, so based on their production ability. So something like this, a PD&E could probably be accelerated. They could probably get something a little earlier. We assume things would most likely come out in the new 5th year, which means PD&E and then theoretically design, 3 years later, right-of-way acquisition, 3 years later, construction, a couple of years later, so you'd think about potentially PD&E in the new 5th year, so 2030. And then you would have construction probably way out in maybe close to 2040.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is
potentially.
because this is a 2018 priority project.
Right.
And we are in 24, it's already 6 years and we're still in planning phase.
We
so-
are, and that's one of those things where, and then maybe this is where there's some confusion on it too, right? Or the priorities, even though it's 2018, this is one of those ones in the long range plan, which was, this isn't a product that has an identified, I think I mentioned it, that their need for this project wasn't really that high from a statewide perspective. And from a LRTP perspective, for the TPA, like there's no congestion need here, really. There's safety concerns and some other concerns, but we saw this product implementation-wise pretty far out. So it started with this study, and that's why I was in the list as that study. And now we've seen the board mention that we should probably get this thing going. And that was this conversation this last meeting. And that's why we're like, okay, well, we can put some PD&E now and really get this thing going. So before it's just, well, there was an economic opportunity out there and with an inland port. And so we'll have a study done and see where it goes. And now it seems like it's gaining more steam. But I don't know if like internal staff ever intended this to be seen as like an accelerated product to the extent it is now. We're going to put PD&E in, but.
Okay. And the other one is obviously light rail is not in our priority project. Is this in anyone's horizon that, hey, this is something that we need to keep looking on? I know DOT is supposed to do some study on it.
Yes. And Brian's probably walking up to the podium now. He is. As your mic takes a while to turn on, I'll answer, then you can follow up. So they actually have a study right now for State Road 7 and Okeechobee Boulevard feasibility study. Going to be starting up pretty soon. Brian, your mic's working now, so.
Yeah, I know. Brian Richard, Deputy Director of Multimodal. It is on our list to study the feasibility of Okeechobee Boulevard and State Road 7 light rail. That is a current fiscal year item. DOT needs to go out to a consultant for a 2-phase project. Phase 1, they're looking at the roadway transit and other analysis that needs to be done prior to even recommending that for a state roadway. So, and that's actually based on new state law. So if you're really interested in really getting technical, the state requires you, agencies now to undergo a pretty substantial analysis prior to even making the recommendation for lane repurposing, before we even get to design or feasibility. So DOT's had to update their lane repurposing manual to look at what that feasibility analysis is going to need to have and go out for a new consultant. So they mentioned that they would start the study by June. We've asked them to accelerate that.
Thank you.
Still in the
That's a-
fiscal year, but
That's a good information. to
yeah,
know.
but they're moving on it. They are trying to make it happen faster.
Thank you.
And we do have a design phase for existing transit services. And if you don't know, there's now one of the express buses that ran from Belglade to downtown West Palm in the intermodal by Southern Boulevard did just get shifted to Okeechobee Boulevard and State Road 7 along the same route. And they're now running I believe I forget if it's either 20 or 30-minute service, but it's limited stop.
Okay.
So you pick up at Wellington Green, then you take the express bus into downtown. There's only a handful of stops that youuld have to take along the way.
You're
on the
talking about
bus.
40, bus route 40. you're talking
Is
about.
it, it's either 40, 42.
Or
or
44, I
43.
guess, one of them.
One of those, I forget, so I apologize. But that is on one of the stops on our radar, as well as design for existing transit stops at the key locations along the corridor. So we have that design fund for new transit stops this fiscal year as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Any other questions? Comments? All right. That being said, can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion approved by VJ, second. Second by Win. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Oh. Is there any ayes? Any noes?
No,
Okay, 2 noes. Still passes. Thank you very much. Informational items. There are no information items on this agenda. Administrative items, items 4A through 4D are informal only. There will be no staff presentations unless required by the committee. Anybody require presentations on those items? Nope. Seeing none. Our next CAC meeting is scheduled for September 4th, 2024. At this time, our committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great. So you remember, no meeting next month, since September. And then we're probably going to try to schedule an LRTP workshop sometime in August. So you'll see some more information come out in an email to you all. But our next formal meeting is September.